Any thoughts? Where do we find God before his elders? Revelation chapter 4, right?
Oh, yeah.
Right. And it says, immediately I was in the Spirit, behold, a throne set in heaven, and one sat on the throne, and he who sat there, etc., etc. Verse 4, around the throne were 24 thrones, and on the thrones I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white robes, and they had crowns of gold on their heads. So, Revelation 11:16, and the 24 elders who sat before God on their thrones fell on their faces and worshipped God. So here we have the elders, and God is before his elders. There in Isaiah 24. He says, on Mount Zion and in Jerusalem and before his elders gloriously. I would say we're looking at the same elders. These are the 24 elders. So if these are the 24 elders and they're on Mount Zion in Jerusalem, again, the holy city, this Mount Zion here is the new Jerusalem that comes down out of heaven. The elders are there, because this is what we might think of heaven when we think of, up yonder, by and by, all that stuff, the glorious city. This is it. So here's God sitting on it. And the sun and the moon are going to be ashamed. So they don't go away. It's like having a flashlight on a bright day. You can have your flashlight on, but what does it do you? Nothing, right? I mean, the thing's on. It's shining as bright as it ever shined, right? When it's in the dark, it's super bright. Wow, it's doing great. I even had those little keychain lights. When it's pitch black, that thing is great. When you're down in a cave, you can turn it on. It's amazing, right? But when you go outside on a bright day, it does you nothing. It's absolutely worthless. So that's the idea here, is that the sun and the moon remain, but their light is inconsequential in relation to God's light. God is so bright that it's as if their light was nothing. So the point here is details. Details. We look at the details. And even these are going to be brighter than they ever were. The light of the moon will be as light as the light of the sun. The light of the sun will be sevenfold, and the light of seven as the light of 7 days. This is interesting. So the sun and the moon are going to shine even brighter, but still they are ashamed before the Lord, because their light is not equal in glory to God's light. That's going to be pretty bright there, isn't it? And we're all going to be shining too. I wonder if they'll issue sunglasses when we get there. The good news is we'll have good eyes then, right? We won't need sunglasses. So this harmonizes perfectly with what we find in Revelation. The city had no need of the sun or of the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated it. The Lamb is its light. One of the important words there is the city. We're talking about the city. So as we understand earth, it's still this big ball of dirt that we're on. I would presume, I'm not sure. Maybe there's something God's going to do with his light that it will bend, or I don't know. Maybe there's something I just haven't figured out. But presuming that light still goes in a straight line, then the sun would be there to illuminate the other side of the earth. So one thought, okay, it's just one thought, that there's kind of like the side that God's on, Israel, and then there's the other side. You can always come. It's the doors are open, the gates are open. Come on in. So those who are living in the millennium, they've got God's light on the earth. Perhaps it stretches around. I don't know. Certainly God knows that. But the sun and the moon are still there. There shall be no night there. Where? In the city. In the city. They need no lamp nor light of the sun, for the Lord God gives them light, and they shall reign forever and ever. These are the classic heaven passages that we've heard so often, and we long for. I can hardly wait. But they start just a little bit sooner than we thought. They actually start in the millennium, which I'm totally cool with. Great. You know.
Heaven's on earth.
Yeah. Heaven is on earth. And we don't mean it in the New Age sense of man making his own heaven on earth, because that's not going to happen. But when the Lord Jesus comes and establishes his kingdom, then it will be. So the thirst.
We think of as heaven as actually the New Jerusalem.
Right, exactly. What we think of heaven is really the New Jerusalem. But okay, so why did Jesus talk about the kingdom of heaven? Why did he talk about, I go to heaven to prepare a place for you? If what we're suggesting is true, then why did he say those things?
The New Jerusalem comes down.
Right. Because right now that they're separated. Earth, the domain of earth, and the domain of heaven are separated by what? They're separated by a veil. Go back to Isaiah 25. O Lord, you are my God. I will exalt you and praise your name, for you have done wonderful things. Your counsels of old are faithfulness and truth. For you have made a city a ruin, a fortified city a ruin, a palace of foreigners to be a city no more, shall it ever be rebuilt. And he says, and in this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of choice pieces, a feast of wines on the lees, of fat things full of marrow, of well-refined wines on the lees. This is the marriage supper of the Lamb. That's why you got all that eating. And he will destroy on this mountain the surface of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces. The rebuke of his people he will take away from all the earth, for the Lord has spoken. Now his people is talking about Israel proper. To the extent that we are grafted in, great. But he's talking about Israel. The rebuke of his people. Israel as a nation, as a people group, have been rebuked. I think we'll all agree with that. So that's going to be removed. He's going to wipe away those tears from all faces. We read about that in Revelation 7:17. For the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne will shepherd them. Who's the them here? Well, we've got, of course, in context, the 144,000, and then lots and lots and lots of people. He'll lead them to living fountains of waters, and God will wipe away every tear from their eyes. So this is where John is getting that. I mean, obviously he's getting it from God, but God, in accordance with his own word, is essentially giving John the same words as the prophet Isaiah. So we use these as anchor points to establish these things. So this veil, anyway, is over all nations now. It's going to be taken away then. See that? The surface of the covering cast over all people, and the veil that is spread over all nations. In the book of Revelation, where do we see that veil coming off? I'll give you a hint. It's chapter 6. When the heavens recede as a scroll, right. When the heavens recede as a scroll, it's not just that the oxygen is all being pushed to this side and some being pushed to that side. It's the veil that's between us. Isaiah says the same thing. Oh, that you would rend the heavens and come down. Isaiah 64. In Isaiah 33, he says that the heavens will, or 34, the heavens will recede as a scroll. So we see that. Stephen saw the heavens open up when he was being stoned. Other prophets have seen the heavens open up just a little bit. But it's kind of like, whoop, you look in and then you close it back up. You get to see just a little glimpse of it, and then it's closed back up. But eventually it's going to be the whole thing whoosh, just opened up like a scroll. It's going to be completely opened. Yeah, Marty, will you go to my office? I have a scroll on my desk, and we can get a vision of what rolling it up like a scroll is going to look like. That'll be kind of fun. This is Isaiah 25, 6 through 8.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, so the heavens rolled up like a scroll. So the light of God is illuminating the city. We don't know if it's going to illuminate the entire earth. We're not told. Maybe. Maybe not. Maybe the sun will do that. The sun and the moon. There'll be plenty of light.
Well, there's something in verse 24 that might indicate that.
Okay. In Isaiah 25, 24?
No. Revelation 21, verse 24.
Revelation 21.
The nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Those of the earth shall bring the glory and honor into it.
Okay. The city had no need of the sun or the moon to shine in it, for the glory of God illuminated the Lamb as its light, and the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light. So that's the light of
The city.
Of the
Because
city.
that's the whole context
is the city.
the city.
Yeah.
The New Jerusalem.
Right.
I mean, I was just wondering, because I always wonder, because there are some people who think that the New Jerusalem will be like, orbit around the earth. And
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, if this is where they get that from.
Uh-huh.
It's actually my timeline.
This is its timeline. So somebody gave me this. This is a Torah scroll, and of course, here's the Torah. But so pretty cool. So here are the heavens, right? And they're going to be rolled up like a scroll. Isn't that an interesting picture? So you say, okay, if the heavens are rolled up like a scroll, what's behind that? Right? What's behind that scroll? Well, Jesus. That's what.
So is the scroll closed like that now?
What's that?
Is the scroll closed? It has
Yes.
to be open?
It's closed.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it has to be open.
Yeah, it's open right now. Right? I mean, it's going to be rolled up like a scroll.
Oh yeah, so it can come out.
So there's something that it's essentially covering whatever is behind it. It's
It's a screen.
yeah, it's a screen. It's like a one-way mirror. They can see us, we can't see them.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah. And but in that day, the one-way mirror is going to be removed, and it won't be a separation of God's domain, the heavenly domain, the spiritual realm versus our realm. It's all going to be one big happy place. And that's how it was in the beginning, right? I mean, that's how it was in the beginning. Where was God? He was walking in the midst of the garden, right? Adam and Eve were not at all surprised by him there. They were kind of bummed after they fell, but they weren't like, "What are you doing here?" Right? They expected it. And Satan was in Eden, the garden of God. He was on the holy mountain of God. So whatever happened, we're not told explicitly, but we can kind of connect the dots from what we have, is that when Adam and Eve fell, and at the point that they were cast out, and then the cherub was put in front of that tree, he somehow blocked the entrance back into that place. Now, I tend to think of it as sort of at that point, we went and we came two different dimensions. You then had the earthly, physical realm, and you had the spiritual realm. What's amazing about that is that Satan even boasts of this in extra-biblical texts. He boasts of this as the Akkadian god Enlil, and the Sumerian god Enlil. He boasts that he is the one who separated heaven and earth, and that he took earth as his portion, and Anu, which is the creator god, took heaven as his portion. So I would suggest that's the case, and he was the ruler of this world for 4,000 years until the Lord Jesus came, purchased it back, and now Jesus has possession of the scroll. He's got the tablets of destiny. Satan also boasted of holding the tablets of destiny, which gave him authority over mankind and the cosmos. And if in one time in the myths, he lost them. Somebody stole them, and he no longer had power. He had to get them back. And if you don't have the tablets of destiny, you're nothing, right? I mean, what's a God without the tablets of destiny anyway, right? Well, I kind of think that he's sort of letting the cat out of the bag. I think he's actually telling the truth to some extent, that he does have the, or he did anyway, until the cross. He had the tablets of destiny. We find those tablets of destiny in Revelation chapter 5, where John begins to weep because nobody was worthy to open the scroll. Until he says, hey, what are you crying about? Here comes the Lion of Judah. He's worthy. And he sees a lamb that had been, as if it had been slain. So Jesus comes because he died for the sins of the world. He actually, in as much as he saved us, right, which is good, but he also redeemed, he purchased back the earth, the very planet, and all the entire creation had fallen under the power. The legal authority had been swindled, but it was still legally Satan's. And Jesus took him, not only took him to court, but he paid the fine or whatever was necessary. He kind of swindled it back in a sense, right? Satan didn't see it coming. It's the ultimate checkmate. So, Satan's in check right now. When Jesus comes back, then he's in checkmate. Yeah. Right? So he knows he's running for his life, but he's going to keep running until he's finally done in. And it's at that point when the veil is going to come off. And see, Jesus can't take the veil away too soon. Because what happens when you take the veil away? Right. The game party's over, right? I mean, at that point, if there's no separation between the two realms, then whoever is not in is completely lost forever. So the day's coming. Come quickly, Lord. He will. Coming soon. All right, 23. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth shall bring their glory and honor into it. And they shall bring the glory and honor of the nations into it. So what we see is that, again, this is taking place in the millennium. You have kings. You have nations. It's not that everything has become undifferentiated, but you still have people from different parts of the world. And they are coming in a progressive sense, that they're coming in, some are coming and receiving their new bodies by way of the river of life and the trees of life. They're bringing their glory because they still have kingdoms here and there and all this different stuff. So it kind of brings that into it kind of clarifies that. And of course it is paralleled with Isaiah 60 verses 5 through a couple here. Because the abundance of the sea shall be turned to you, the wealth of the Gentiles should come to you. The Gentiles is the word goyim, which just means nations. So we have the same thing here, the nations. The nations. Sometimes when we have these words, it can kind of muddy the water, but it just means nations. They shall bring gold and incense, and they shall proclaim the praises of the Lord. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered together to you. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister to you. They shall ascend with acceptance on my altar, and I will glorify the house of my glory, that men may bring to you the wealth of the Gentiles or nations and their kings in procession. So this is talking about Jerusalem. We read this passage before, Isaiah 60. Arise, shine, for your light is come. The glory of the Lord is risen upon you. If we look at that there in the Hebrew, all of the pronouns you in this passage are talking, they're singular and they're feminine. Jerusalem is singular, feminine. So we're talking about the city. We're talking about the city. For behold, darkness shall cover the earth, and thick darkness the peoples, but the Lord will arise upon you, and his glory will be seen upon you. So this would almost seem like there's still darkness on the other side of the planet. But here in Israel, in Jerusalem, there's light abundantly. So it's not that the entire earth is always day, but the city is always day. Right? If you want to travel to the other side of the planet, you'll be able to enjoy day and night. But you won't have, but in the city itself, there will be no night, because God's light is forever shining. Yes?
That means the Jews that live in Israel will never have darkness.
That's right. They'll have to travel elsewhere to find the darkness. Pardon?
That works on two levels.
How so?
Well, they have Jesus, so they're not in darkness anymore.
Right.
If they leave Jesus, it's back in darkness.
True. Yeah, why would you ever leave?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, we know that the Jews won't. Right. Others
Picture.
will.
It's a picture.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. It's a nice picture. Yes.
But they'll never sleep.
Pardon?
They can't sleep.
They can't sleep.
Oh, blackout drapes.
It doesn't seem that you'll need to sleep in that. I mean, if you're...
It's kind of hard to sleep there.
Well, yeah. Yeah. I think sleep actually became a gift after the fall. In a glorified body, you would never need to sleep because you never get tired, because there'd be no degeneration. But there's no lack of energy. So we're all looking forward to that day, right? Come on, Lord. Yeah, please let us. You'll have rest, but you won't have to sleep, right? So far as I can tell. All nations shall come to your light, and the kings to the brightness of your rising. Lift up your eyes all around and see. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from afar, and your daughters shall be carried on the hip. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and exult, because the abundance of the seas will be turned to you. The wealth of the nations shall come to you. A multitude of camels shall cover you, and young camels of Midian and Ephah. All those of Sheba shall come. They shall bring gold and frankincense, and shall bring good news, the praises of the Lord. All the flocks of Kedar shall be gathered to you. The rams of Nebaioth shall minister to you, etc. So this is, again, this picture of what's coming. We see that the nations will come. This happens in the millennium. And yet the city, the New Jerusalem, is on the earth, and God himself is in that place. He will be in their midst. The name of the city will be known as the Lord is there, Adonai Shammah. The kings of Tarshish and of the isles will bring presents. The kings of Sheba and Seba will offer gifts. Psalm 72:10. The gates will always be open. We read there in Isaiah 60:11. Therefore, your gates shall be open continually. They shall not be shut day or night, that men may bring to you the wealth of the Gentiles and their kings in procession. We read in Revelation 21:26, its gates shall not be shut at all by day. There shall be no night there, and they shall bring the glory and the honor of the nations into it. Nothing outside can enter. Sin is present, but outside the city. It's outside. It's not in the city. There's absolutely nothing that defiles in the city. But outside the city, oh yeah. We read, but there shall by no means enter it, that is the New Jerusalem, anything that defiles or causes an abomination or a lie, but only those who are written in the Lamb's book of life. We read in Revelation 22, blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have the right to the tree of life and may enter through the gates into the city. But outside are dogs and sorcerers and sexually immoral and murderers and idolaters and whoever loves and practices a lie. So we can either say, well, this is talking figuratively, or this is just talking about everybody who's in the lake of fire. That's how it's traditionally interpreted. But I would say that No, these people are still outside. They're not in judgment yet. They will be if they continue. But they're outside. They're alive. But they cannot go into the city. The city's on the earth. There's potential to go in the city for everybody. But the possibility is only true for those who keep the commandments. Yeah, there's a requirement. You have to keep the commandments. And there's absolutely no reason you shouldn't be keeping his commandments in that day and age. You can't say the devil made me do it. Sorry. You can't say I was tempted because of something I saw on TV. Sorry. You can't say...
Don't you think everyone will just blow it anyway? I can see everyone just doing it, even if they don't want to fix it.
Well, people are going to. But at this time, it's not going to be because of Satan tempting people. Right? It's not because you got some nasty mail in your mailbox and you sinned. It's not because you were walking on the street and one of Satan's agents said, "Hey, dude, come over here." Right? It's your own wickedness in your heart that will cause the mortals to do this. Isaiah 52, "Awake, awake, put on your strength, O Zion, put on your beautiful garments, O Jerusalem, the holy city. For the uncircumcised and the unclean shall no longer come to you. Thus says the Lord God, no foreigner, no uncircumcised in heart or uncircumcised in flesh shall enter my sanctuary, including any foreigner who is among the children of Israel." Yes, every pot in Jerusalem and Judah shall be holiness to the Lord of hosts. Everyone who sacrifices shall come and take them and cook in them. In that day there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of the Lord of hosts. So keep in mind, we've got the New Jerusalem, the holy city is there, and yet outside we have the dwelling places of the Jews who apparently have not gotten their new bodies yet. I'm not sure why they would wait. I really don't know. I've been pondering that question. And I presume the answer will come eventually. But we know that 1/3 are going to make it through, as we read in Zechariah 13, verse 9. There's going to be a fountain opened in that day for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for uncleanness, which is the river of life. The trees of life are going to be right there. So, as we considered Isaiah 65, it could be, and again, this is speculation, but it could be that those who are in that vicinity might have to wait 100 years. No more shall there be in it an infant who lives but a few days, or an old man who does not fulfill or fill out his days. For the young man shall die 100 years old, and the sinner 100 years old shall be accursed. So it seems that you have a minimum of 100 years. Could it be that that's a waiting period? Could it be that that is a time of having to prove, just kind of like we live our life here, and God does a work in us? Maybe they're going to have a minimum 100 years that they have to wait before they can have access to the tree of life. I don't know. I'm just throwing out some ideas. Any ideas, thoughts, improvements?
I thought Zechariah 13 was talking about the tribulation, how many Jews got out of the tribulation.
Zechariah 13.
With the 1/3 of the Jews coming out.
Well, it says, on that day, this is according to the ESV, in that day a fountain shall be opened for the house of David and for the inhabitants of Jerusalem, for sin and for uncleanness. It shall be in that day, says the Lord of hosts, that I will cut off the names of the idols from the land, and they shall no longer be remembered. I will also cause the prophets of the unclean spirit to depart from the land. So, well, what you have is you often hear of the near and the far,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So he's talking about in that day. So he's kind of looking forward to the hope, and then he seems to come back to the bad stuff that's going to happen. For example, the 1/3 that's going to come through the fire, which, as far as we can tell, these are the third that make it, right? The other 2/3 aren't going to make it, but with these 1/3 that come through, they will then be purified. And I believe it has to do with 1 Corinthians chapter 3. So they're now exposed to God's fire. Now, what is the timetable of this? I'm not always certain. That it will happen, that I am certain. Exactly when it happens is another question. Right? What's the sequence of all these things is sometimes a little challenging to sort through. But we keep looking for clues, and we find them. So here we go. The 2/3 in it shall be cut off and die, but 1/3 shall be left in it. So, there's something going on there. So the people that die in Isaiah 65, there's no need for them. Of course there's no need. They don't have to, but obviously they're making some kind of a choice that will allow them to do that. And notice here that verse 17, for behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. So he's made the new heavens and the new earth. And then verse 20, you still have people dying.
Yeah, also, though, it seems to be more like it would be the old Jerusalem rather than the new Jerusalem, which is probably there in the same vicinity.
Right.
Because as I look at this, it's talking about they're going to be building houses.
Yes.
Planting vineyards. And,
yes.
That doesn't sound like a new Jerusalem.
I agree with you. Yeah. And this is what we read in Ezekiel 43, where it says that the glory of the Lord came from the east into the temple. So if we're looking here, we've got our, here's our earth here. So here's the temple, and then apparently the mountain of the Lord is somewhere over here or something like that. Here's God seated on the throne. His light is coming, and it's coming into the temple from the east, and it's filling this. So this right here, this temple, of course, is in the midst of the land of Israel. We might call the country of Israel. So if this is our, forgive my drawing, but if this is the country of Israel, you have what appears to be these portions of land, each, like a strip of land is given for each tribe. So up here in the north and then all the way down, and then the temple seems to be somewhere in the middle of that. And then we kind of draw it again here. You've got, so the mountain of the Lord is over here somewhere. The light's coming into it. So it's, we might, when we talk about, LA, right? I mean, people ask you, when you're on the other side of the world, so where do you live? LA, That's kind of what I might say, right? We're really close. Because they've never heard of Costa Mesa, right? Where is that? Santa Ana. LA, yeah. Oh, okay, yeah, got it. So maybe that's what's happening here, is that we're in the same basic neighborhood, but there's Jerusalem, New Jerusalem proper, and then there's Jerusalem that we understand. I don't know the distance between these. I really don't know, but they're not one and the same, and that's why when we get to Revelation 20, and when Satan comes at the end there, he's released. And when the 1,000 years are ended, Satan will be released from his prison. and will come out to deceive the nations that are at the four corners of the earth, Gog and Magog, to gather them for battle. Their number is like the sand of the sea, and they marched up over the broad plain of the earth. Notice here. So, they're marching up somehow, the broad plain of the earth, and it says, they surrounded the camp of the saints, which I understand to be this general vicinity, Israel, the temple, the saints. I don't think the saints is us necessarily. The word saints in the Bible is very often used of the nation of Israel. I don't know if that's true every time, but I'd say it's true many times. Let me prove it to you. Thank you for asking. I love to prove things. All right, Daniel 7, what is that, verse 15?
Are we allowed to use it for us?
Well, only to the extent that we're grafted in. But I would suggest maintaining a distinction. I mean, we are saints because we're in the Lord, right? A saint is simply a holy one. A holy one is somebody who has been separated. Sometimes in Daniel chapter 4 we hear about the watchers, and they're called holy ones, right? So angels can be holy ones, but also the Jews are called the saints. Notice here, but the saints of the Most High shall receive the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And then if you pair this with what is going to happen to them, look at, as I looked, this horn made war with the saints and prevailed against them. Well, where is that happening? Revelation 13:7, it was granted to make war with the saints and to overcome them, and authority was given him over every tribe, tongue, and nation. Now, let's go to there, and let's just go back one chapter. Revelation chapter 12, there's this great sign in heaven, the woman clothed with the sun, moon under her feet, and on her head crown of 12 stars. So this woman is Israel. She gives birth to the Messiah. Messiah is taken up. He's caught up to God. He's actually raptured up to God is the word there. The woman fled into the wilderness where she has a place prepared by God in which she is to be nourished for 1,260 days. Now a war rose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon, and the dragon and his angels fought back. We find this in Daniel 12, verse 1. At that time Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time, and at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone who is found written in the book. So this is talking about Daniel's people, right? And Michael is he is the chief prince or the archangel over the people of Israel. So what happens here is that now there's this war breaking out in heaven because Michael is fighting against the dragon. And of course the dragon is going to try to destroy the people of Israel. You see? So, and they're called the saints. So this is a reference here. The saints is talking about Israel. Sure, we're grafted in. That's all nice. But it's still talking about Israel. So as we look at that, it was allowed to make war on the saints and to conquer them. And then we see that the Antichrist is going to be destroyed. And then judgment was given for the saints of the Most High, and the time came when the saints possessed the kingdom. It's talking about the Jews. But don't worry, we get to be grafted in, guys, okay? So God's got a plan for us. That's all great. But we're not the main star. We're just not. I'm happy to have a side position. It's all good for me, you know. So, and notice here, this parallels perfectly well. He shall speak words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and shall think to change the times in the law, and they shall be given into his hand for a time, times, and half a time. So if we're going to take Revelation 12 as being Israel, which I believe we have to, because the whole sun, moon, and stars thing is what Joseph saw in his dream, right? And his father asked, what? Am I, your mother and brothers, going to bow down before you? All right? So this is talking about Israel. So this is why we started the class off with Israel as the focus of the millennium. It's so important. If we start putting us as Gentile believers at the center of this thing, it doesn't make any sense. We'll have a part. It's going to be good. It's going to be fun. But we're not front and center. It's the nation of Israel. We just get to be grafted in. So it's all good for me. I think it'll be good for you too. So there's sin outside the place there. So this camp of the saints is the area of Israel and the beloved city. See that? And the beloved city. So Satan comes up against the broad plain of the earth. He's got so many people with him. It's like the sands of the sea. It's estimated that before the flood, there were between 6 to 17 billion people on the planet, because they weren't experiencing all the death and decay and stuff that we are today. I mean, they were dying, of course, but their lives were greatly enhanced. During the millennium, it will have similar, not exactly the same, but similar conditions as pre-flood, and even better. So lifespans should be practically infinite, really. So there will be a lot of people on the earth. And of course there'll be more land, a whole lot more land. There'll still be some lakes here and there. But there'll be plenty of space for all these people to live. And now they're going to take option B. We've waited. We didn't want to go up and get our new bodies. We didn't want to keep those commandments. We decided to follow the own evil dictates of our hearts. And now the guy we've been waiting for has finally come. He's been let out of prison. He made bail. And we're going to follow him, because he told us that we can have our cake and eat it too. He told us that we can become our own gods. He'll use the same lies. What did God tell you? You're kidding. No. Now that I've escaped, I really suspect he'll say that he's going to think that he escaped. And in reality, God's like, okay, let him out now, And Satan will be like, oh, I finally picked the lock, and he'll get out, and he's going to go out thinking that, he's doing it by his own power, I presume. And he goes and he gives probably the same lies he did in the beginning. Listen, guys, I'll show you how to become your own God. You don't need to follow this brutal dictator Jesus. Why would you do that? He doesn't let you have any fun, right? Probably the same lies as before. So they come, they surround the camp of the saints and the beloved city. But fire came down from heaven and consumed them. So they're ready for battle, right? They're all dressed up, got their whatever hoes or rakes, shovels. They're ready for the battle. There's no battle this time. There's no battle. They are gathered together and fire comes down. Now, what I understand is that this is after the 1,000 years, and I haven't found a proof text yet, but I'm still looking for it. But it's probably there in Ezekiel. I just didn't probably dig hard enough. But the sacrifices end. When they end, that provisional covering that we've talked about is taken away. And at that point, these people now come into the glorious presence of God, unprotected. That sacrifice that was covering them for the 1,000 years is no longer there. So their force field or spacesuit is taken away, and they just get zapped. God's fire just, boom, it now devours them, and they are relegated to Tophet or Gehenna. And then it says that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, all flesh will come before me and worship me, and they will go out and look upon the corpses of the men who transgressed against me where their worm does not die and their fire is not quenched, and they shall be an abhorrence to all flesh. So that's what we're left with in the book of Isaiah, is this really horrific picture. But it's here on the earth. It's not way out in space or something. It's right here, and it's the very guys who blew it. So it sort of ties some of these things together. We have a judgment at the beginning of the millennium, when Jesus is there, separates the sheep and the goats. All the goats go into the lake of fire. So, as in 2 more weeks, we'll kind of debate this even more. But what I'm thinking, what I see so far, is that the judgment is not a one-time event, great white throne judgment, one-time event. But I'd see it more as a process. There is a great white throne judge, right, and judgment seat, and Jesus is on it. And as you come into his presence, it's really no different from the believer and for the unbeliever. We're all going to stand before the Lord. For the believer, we have our wedding garment on. And whatever remains, whatever good things we took with us are going to remain. Whatever lousy works we took with us will get burned off. But we will be saved yet as though through fire. For the unbeliever, he has no garment of salvation. So even if he did some so-called good works here and there, they're just blown away right away. And he has no garment to cover him, and the fire of God consumes him, torments him forever and ever. And they're not just left there, sitting right before the Lord, but they're relegated to this place called Tophet. And there they're all confined, and they'll remain there forever. Very unpleasant experience. But that seems to be the case.
Do you think that's in Israel somewhere?
Well, if we understand that Gehenna is the valley of the son of Hinnom, that's what Ge means valley in Hebrew. And Hinnom, or Henna, comes from Hinnom, and it was just down the hill from Jerusalem. I mean, literally just boom, right down there. Like a good rock's throw. Not very far at all. Maybe like hitting a home run kind of distance, Not too far from that hill. Yes, all kings shall fall down before him, all nations shall serve him. And the nations of those who are saved shall walk in its light, and the kings of the earth bring their glory and honor into it. Kings shall be your foster fathers, and their queens your nursing mothers. They shall bow down to you with their faces to the earth, and lick up the dust of your feet. Then you will know that I am the Lord, for they shall not be ashamed who wait for me. I love that. And lastly, Isaiah 60:16. You shall drink the milk of the Gentiles and milk the breast of kings. I don't quite understand that one, to be honest. You shall know that I, the Lord, am your Savior and your Redeemer, the mighty one of Jacob. I'm sure there's a good answer. Well, we'll have to stop there for today. Thanks again for the exciting class. Yeah. And I will see you next week. Come with your verses read and ready to fight your points. Okay.